Hello, welcome to Principal Chan Free Tutorial World. Today, we're here to learn about how to introduce examples in writing 1. The objective today is to explain the ideas of a topic well. Students should include examples which make the thoughts much more concrete, practical, and comprehensible to the readers. 舉例會令到思想更加具體、實用同埋容易明白。Without good examples, the readers are left with just theories that are too difficult to understand and apply. Let's take a look at the below paragraph. I read the book a few days ago, and it has answered writing questions that have plagued me for as long as I can remember. Reading this book brought me a sense of relief and calm. Now, let's take a look how we can make this paragraph better. In order to explain the topic well in the paragraph, there should be specific examples. Like below. I read the book a few days ago, and it has answered writing questions that have plagued me for as long as I can remember. For example, I have found the genres of writing that have great difficulty in my composition. Reading this book brought me a sense of relief and calm. Furthermore, we can read the example for the exact type of notebook you want. Prepare a notebook. Pick one with a cover that you can write a title on. Don't get a big one. For example, get a small notebook with a wooden cover so you can draw on it with colored pencils. Prepare some photos as well. These phrases are often used incorrectly. For example, for instance, such as exempli gratia or e.g. as we usually say in a short form nowadays. These phrases essentially have the same meaning, but they are not used in the same way. For our purposes today, let's break them up into two groups. Phrases used within a sentence and phrases used to begin a new sentence. Group 1. Phrases used within a sentence. Each phrase can be used within a sentence when it is followed by a list of items which elaborate on or show examples for the main idea of the sentence. Here are the examples. I can play quite a few musical instruments. For example, the flute, the guitar, and the piano. I can play quite a few musical instruments. For instance, the flute, the guitar, and the piano. I can play quite a few musical instruments, e.g., the flute, the guitar, and the piano. I can play quite a few musical instruments, such as the flute, the guitar, and the piano. Now, let's take a look at the last sentence with such as. Do you see anything different with this sentence as compared to the first three? I can play quite a few musical instruments. For example, the flute, the guitar, and the piano. I can play quite a few musical instruments. For instance, the flute, the guitar, and the piano. I can play quite a few musical instruments, e.g., the flute, the guitar, and the piano. I can play quite a few musical instruments, such as the flute, the guitar, and the piano. Do you see the difference? Yes. Such as does not have a comma after it. The first three phrases have commas before and after them. Let's take a look again at the four phrases. So we see in the first phrase, we have for example. Before, for example, there's one comma, and after, for example, there's another comma. When we look at the second phrase, it's the same. Before, for instance, there's one comma, and there's also one comma after, for instance. The third phrase is with e.g. Now, before e.g., there's a comma, and after e.g., there's also another comma. Now when we look at the last phrase with such as, we'll see that before such as there's one comma, but after such as there is no comma. The phrase such as can be used in the middle of a sentence without any commas. Take a look at this example. Car companies such as Toyota and Ford manufacture their automobiles in many different countries around the world. You may be wondering why there are no commas. The answer is simple. The words after such as are necessary and essential to the meaning of the sentence. If you take out those words, the meaning will change. Let's take out such as. Car companies Toyota and Ford manufacture their automobiles in many different countries around the world. Let's take a look at the sentence again. What does this sentence mean now? It could mean all car companies manufacture their automobiles in many different countries around the world. This is not true, because some companies produce their cars in just one or two countries. Therefore, the phrase such as Toyota and Ford is necessary. If these words are necessary, do not use commas. Now let's take a look at group 2, which are phrases used to begin a new sentence. Usually, only for example and for instance can begin new sentences. Each can begin a new sentence when the phrase is followed by a complete idea or sentence, not a list of items. Now let's take a look at the below examples. Mr. Lee loves going to the restaurant, which serves exotic foods. For example, last week he went to a restaurant which serves deep-fried rattlesnake. Mr. Lee loves going to the restaurants which serve exotic foods. For instance, last week he went to a restaurant which serves deep-fried rattlesnake. Let's take a deeper look at the sentence with for example. How can we simplify the above paragraph? Let's use the phrase for example. Based on the original sentence, Mr. Lee loves going to restaurants which serve exotic foods. For example, last week he went to a restaurant which serves deep-fried rattlesnake. We can change that to Mr. Lee loves going to the restaurants which serve exotic foods. For example, deep-fried rattlesnake. Although these two have the same meaning, which explains why Mr. Lee loves going to restaurants. However, the original sentence does give a little bit more detail about when he went to a restaurant that serves deep-fried rattlesnake. Whereas the second sentence, which is more simplified, is purely talking about restaurants which serves exotic foods, for example, serving deep-fried rattlesnakes. Now that we have seen examples of how to use the two ways of inserting ideas or more details about a topic, now let's start our exercise together. Please proofread the following sentences. Also pay attention to the punctuation. Question 1. When I go camping, I bring lots of things. For example, mosquito repellent, torches, and a sleeping bag. Let's take a deeper look again. When I go camping, comma, I bring lots of things, period. For example, comma, mosquito repellent, comma, torches, comma, and a sleeping bag, period. Now let's take a moment and proofread the sentence and see if there's anything that needs to be changed. Now let's take a look at the answer. There is one small punctuation that we need to change. When I go camping, comma, I bring lots of things, comma. For example, comma, mosquito repellent, comma, torches, comma, and a sleeping bag, period. The reason why we change from the period after I bring lots of things to a comma is because the details that is being introduced After, for example, is actually a list of different items: the mosquito repellent, the torches, and the sleeping bag. If the details after, for example, are a list of items, we should use comma in between the sentences rather than starting a new sentence with for example and introduce the new list of items. Now let's take a look at question number 2. There have been many leaders in history who have tried to rule the entire world. For instance, Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great. Let's take a deeper look again. There have been many leaders in history who have tried to rule the entire world, period. For instance, comma, Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great, period. Now let's proofread together and see is there any place that we need to change. Now let's take a look at the answer. Indeed, there's somewhere that we need to change. There have been many leaders in history who have tried to rule the entire world. For instance, Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great. Just like in question number 1, for instance works very similar to for example. So when we are introducing Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great into the sentence, we do not need to create a new sentence to introduce them. Instead, we should just add a comma before for instance and a comma after for instance to introduce Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great into the sentence to make the entire meaning or further details of the sentence better. Question number 3. Do you have any hobbies, e.g., collecting stamps or baseball cards? Let's take a deeper look. Do you have any hobbies, comma, e.g., comma, collecting stamps or baseball cards? Now let's proofread together. Now let's take a look at the answer. In fact, the answer for question number 3 is correct. There is no grammatical or punctuation mistakes. Because when we take a deeper look at the sentence, do you have any hobbies, comma, e.g., comma, collecting stamps or baseball cards? Collecting stamps or baseball cards, this particular section is actually a list of the ideas or details related to any hobbies. So therefore, when we use e.g., this particular sentence has a comma before e.g. and a comma after e.g., which is correct. So therefore, when you were proofreading it, you cannot find any mistakes. You're right. Question number 4. Food, such as pizza and hamburgers, are not really junk food. They contain a lot of protein and vitamins. Now let's take a deeper look. Food, comma, such as, comma, pizza and hamburgers are not really junk food, semicolon. They contain a lot of protein and vitamins, period. Let's proofread together. Let's take a look at the answer. So indeed, there was something wrong with the sentence. It should be food such as pizza and hamburgers are not really junk food, semicolon. They contain a lot of protein and vitamins. You will notice that the correct answer with such as does not have a comma before or after such as. That's because such as does not need to have a comma to introduce new items or ideas into the sentence. So therefore, it is a little bit different than for example or for instance. Now, let's move on to the next question. Tom has met many famous people. For example, one time he met Bill Gates in the street. Let's take a deeper look. Tom has met many famous people, period. For example, one time he met Bill Gates in the street. Let's proofread together. Now, let's take a look at the answer. Indeed, there is a small punctuation mistake here in the original sentence. It should be, Tom has met many famous people, period. For example, comma, one time he met Bill Gates in the street. So, the use of the colon in the sentence actually was incorrect. It should be a comma after for example, since after for example is a complete sentence that complements to which famous people that Tom might have met before, so therefore it is correct to use for example, comma, one time he met Bill Gates in the street. So remember, next time when you're introducing a new sentence that is in a complete sentence form after for example, remember to use a comma, not a colon. Now let's move on to question number 6. When I visit Japan, I want to go to many cities such as Tokyo and Kyoto. Let's take a deeper look. When I visit Japan, comma, I want to go to many cities such as Tokyo and Kyoto, period. Now let's proof it together. Let's take a look at the answer. Indeed, there is a small error in the sentence. It should be, when I visit Japan, comma, I want to go to many cities, comma, such as Tokyo and Kyoto, period. In this particular scenario, we can see that such as is actually at the end of the sentence rather than within or in the middle of the sentence. So therefore, in order to make the list of the cities, Tokyo and Kyoto, to be more apparent, we will need to have a comma before such as to introduce the two cities in the sentence. Now, question number 7. Emily has taken many psychology classes, e.g., behavior psychology, child psychology, and group dynamics. Let's take a deeper look. Emily has taken many psychology classes, e.g., behavior psychology, comma, child psychology, comma, and group dynamics. Let's proof it together. Let's see the answer. So when we take a deeper look, there is a small error in the sentence. It should be, Emily has taken many psychology classes, comma, e.g., comma, behavior psychology, comma, child psychology, comma, and group dynamics. Now, the way that the original sentence used e.g. is very similar to such as. However, e.g. is not equal to such as, so therefore, when we are introducing a new group or a new list of items to complement the original topic, we will need to use commas before and after e.g. Now, let's move on to question number 8. I love old TV shows, for example, The Twilight Zone and Gilligan's Island. Let's take a deeper look. I love old TV shows, comma, for example, comma, The Twilight Zone and Gilligan's Island, period. Let's prove it together. Let's check the answer. In fact, this particular sentence is correct. The usage of for example is actually correct. I love old TV shows, for example, The Twilight Zone and Gilligan's Island. So when you're taking a deeper look, you can see that there is a comma before for example and a comma after for example, and when you're introducing a new idea within the sentence using for example, this is the correct way of using for example. So when you were proofreading and you noticed that there is nothing wrong with the sentence, you were right. Now, move on to question number 9. Joyce has studied many Asian languages, for instance, Korean, Chinese, and Thai. Let's take a deeper look. Joyce has studied many Asian languages, for instance, Korean, Chinese, and Thai, period. Let's proofread it together. Let's check the answer. So indeed, there's a small error in the punctuation in the original sentence. Joyce has studied many Asian languages, for instance, Korean, Chinese, and Thai, period. Similarly to, for example, when you're introducing a list of items to the topic, you will need comma before and comma after, for instance. So therefore, the original sentence was incorrect, and we would need to add the commas before and after, for instance, in order to make this particular sentence grammatically correct. Moving to question number 10. Uncle George loves rock musicians from the 1970s, such as Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin. Let's take a deeper look. Uncle George loves rock musicians from the 1970s, such as Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin. Let's proofread it together. Let's check the answer. So when we take a look at it more deeply, we'll notice that there is one small error to the sentence. It should be, Uncle George loves rock musicians from the 1970s, such as Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin. So as we can see, this is just one of the small examples where such as does have a comma, which is in front of it when it's introducing new items or a list of items near the end of the sentence. Now that we've done 10 exercises together, let's do more exercises to test yourself. Exercise. Complete the following by proofreading the sentences. Number 1. There are many things a student can do to learn English. For example, students can attend churches where English is spoken. There are many things a student can do to learn English, For example, students can attend churches where English is spoken, period. Number 2. It is possible to combine English literature with other subjects. For example, history. It is possible to combine English literature with other subjects, period. For example, history, period. Number 3. A few simple precautions can be taken, for example, ensuring that desks are the right height. A few simple precautions can be taken, for example, ensuring that desks are the right height, period. Number 4. Nepal has many attractions for visitors. For examples, you can go trekking in the Himalayas or see tigers in Chitwan National Park. Nepal has many attractions for visitors, period. For examples, comma, you can go trekking in the Himalayas, comma, or see tigers in Chitwan National Park, period. Let's work on this 4 questions for about 5 to 6 minutes, and we'll come back again with answers. Now let's check the answers. The answer for number 1. There are many things a student can do to learn English. Period. For example, comma, students can attend churches where English is spoken. So in the previous question, there was a comma after can do to learn English. But in fact, it should be a period because after, for example, it is a full sentence that is explaining what things or one of the things that the students can do to learn English. Answer number 2. It is possible to combine English literature with other subjects, comma, for example, comma, history, period. Unlike the first answer, where there is a full sentence after, for example, in this particular scenario, history is actually just one of the items that is possible to combine English literature and is not written in a full sentence. So therefore, in the original sentence, there was a period after with other subjects, and then, for example, comma, history, period. So we will need to change the period into a comma so that we can integrate the list after, for example, or history in this matter, into the sentence correctly. Answer number 3. A few simple precautions can be taken, comma, for example, with no capitalization, ensuring that desks are the right height, period. So for this particular answer, there is nothing wrong with the punctuation, but rather on the capitalization for example. In the original sentence, for examples, for was capitalized, and that was incorrect. So therefore, that was the only error in the sentence. Answer number 4. Nepal has many attractions for visitors, period. For example, with no S, comma, you can go trekking in the Himalayas, comma, or see tigers in Sichuan National Park, period. So even though that there were 2 items after, for example, which is go trekking in the Himalayas or go see the tigers, you do not need to have a plural for example. It's simply for example, not for examples in the original sentence. Grammatically, the punctuation is also correct because after for example, it is a full sentence with the 2 items. So therefore, the only error in this sentence is just the plural or the S after for example. And that's it for today for how to introduce examples in writing 1 with Principal Chan's free tutorial world. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope to see you next time. Happy learning!